Now, let's look at some of the business stories around for you this morning. Sebastian Chrispin, our business reporter, is here with us.
Well, joining us now is our business reporter, Sebastian Chrispin.
I'm joined by our reporter, Sebastian Chrispin.
Sebastian Chrispin put us onto the story. Here he is.
Well, we're joined now by our reporter, Sebastian Chrispin. Tell us more about what's happened today and why it's significant.
Well, there have been a couple of developments in relation to this story over the last day or so. One of them is that the company, as you say, has set aside even more money, the other being this arrest. Now, the reason why I think it's important is it just raises a question about when is VW finally going to be able to put this case behind it. We're 2 years on from when news of this scandal broke, and the company is still setting aside large pots of money to cover fresh costs. That makes it very difficult for the company to move forward.
But how bad in the grand scheme of these numbers?
Well, I think it's fair to say that this is a very disappointing set of results for Royal Bank of Scotland. That £2 billion loss for the first half of 2016, let's just compare that to the same period in 2015. Back then, the bank reported a £179 million loss. So the difference between then and now is really quite significant.
And in terms of Crispin's retailing results, we've got some figures from Next, I think, today.
That's right. So Next, very much seen as a bellwether of the UK high street, just reported its sales for the 2 months leading up to Christmas, and it's good news. Next says that the full price sales in roughly the 60 days leading up to Christmas went up by 1.5%. That was more than expected. But I think what's really interesting here is where we see the shift of people moving from buying things in store to buying things online. There's some quite striking figures there. So figures for online sales rose by more than 13% during that period, but at the same time the number of people shopping in stores fell by about 6%. So quite a stark example there of how people are migrating from shopping in store to shopping online.
I can't be the only person that comes to work and sometimes thinks, I wish I had a bit more sleep last night. The NHS says that most adults need around 8 hours sleep a night, but many of us don't get anywhere near that. If you don't get enough sleep, you might be tired or a bit grumpy, but are you less productive? One recent report said that sleep deprivation costs the UK economy £40 billion a year. And that's why some company bosses are beginning to pay more attention to how much sleep their staff are getting.
BBC's Sebastian Chrispin came by a little bit earlier to give me more detail on why all of this is happening.
A few months ago, the Bank of England released a range of policy initiatives aimed at stimulating the UK economy, and it included more conventional things like lowering interest rates to record lows. Now, another policy announced at the same time was a policy of the Bank of England going out and buying company debt. The way this would work is that the Bank of England would go into the market, it would give bond investors cash, and those bond investors would spend the money elsewhere with a view to stimulating growth and creating jobs. Well, the Bank of England held an event today to celebrate 20 years of its independence. And speaking at that event today, Mark Carney said that the Bank of England was better placed to guard financial stability as an independent institution. So he welcomes 20 years of independence. But he was also keen to make clear that the Bank of England wasn't able to do everything. And there were some things beyond its control. Let's see if we can hear what he had to say. This survey is looking at Super Saturday. It's the last full day of shopping before Christmas. Obviously, shops are open today, but because it's Sunday, they're open for a shorter period. But yesterday, apparently, there were 17.4 million people who were planning to go out, who were planning to make purchases, and they were going to spend a total of £1.6 billion. What the Resolution Foundation has done today is it's crunched the numbers, and they reckon that, on average, weekly pay, we are about £15 a week worse off than we were compared to our peak before the crisis. And what they've done again is they've extrapolated from that, and they look at what would have happened had pay continued at its trajectory before the crisis. And they reckon had it continued at that rate, then families could potentially be earning thousands of pounds more than they are now.
There does seem to be something of a north-south divide. The poorer north, the south, of course, with London booming away.
Well, that's right. The Money Advice Service, which is the body behind this report, broke the figures down into regions, and there were some regions that fared worse than others. Well, these figures from the Office for National Statistics do show a picture of growth. Property prices are growing. Average prices in the UK went up about 4.5% in the year to October, but they are growing slower than they were in previous months. I think what's interesting is if you break that national average down, look at what's happening on a more regional level. We might be able to show now what's happening in different parts of England.
Well, joining me now is our reporter Sebastian Chrispin. So, Sebastian, tell us more about what's being proposed.
Well, that's right. So there's been quite a lot in the media about so-called rogue landlords that don't treat their tenants properly. There's been a big emphasis on overcrowding, so landlords that force tenants to live in properties that aren't big enough. So what the government has set out today is a range of measures trying to tackle overcrowding and drive up standards in the private rented sector in England.
Joining us is our reporter Sebastian Chrispin. So where are these expensive streets? I mean, we expect them in London, don't we? But where else are they?
Well, that's right. I think one of the stories coming out of this report of most expensive streets in England and Wales is that now every region in England and Wales has at least one street where the average price is £1 million. The other interesting thing we're seeing is clusters of these very expensive streets developing. So there's one in Cheshire, there is one in Dorset, in the South Banks area of Poole. But interestingly, we're also seeing this, what is termed as the Golden Triangle in Yorkshire between Harrogate, Wetherby and North Leeds. So definitely one of the stories today is this growth of expensive streets outside of London.